Welcome to yet another episode of On the Mark with Arpit. Today we are deviating from possibly our core topic in football. A lot of people assume that football is all we can talk about because we've been involved in football broadcasts for quite a long time. Mark obviously has been involved a little more in football than I have. But today we're not talking about football. We're going to talk about another sport that both Mark and I love. It's cricket, and it is the IPL season. So that's what we're going to talk about, Mark. And we'll have a special guest in this one as well. He'll join us in a couple of minutes. But Mark, just quickly, because in the first episode, I remember you mentioned cricket just a little bit. So tell us about your childhood, your interest in cricket back then and now.
Well, my interest started in secondary school. We had a priest called Father Murphy, and he was so into his cricket, and he got together a lot of coaches that would come in and coach us, and we'd play on a regular basis in the summer. And yeah, I loved it. I was a bowler. I was a batsman as well. They call it an all-rounder, of course, now. So yeah, and I loved it, and I was quite good at it, and it was come to around the age of 15, 16 that I could have gone one way or the other. I could have gone and tried to be a professional cricketer or a professional footballer. So I obviously deviated to the footballing side, but I love it. I love Test cricket. I love the IPL. I think it's an amazing spectacle. So yeah, I just love it, and now we're eagerly watching it every night. It's good viewing, isn't it?
It is definitely. When it comes to cricket, when it comes to India, I don't think there's any sports that comes close to matching the frenzy that cricket has. I'm not going to go into as much detail as you do, but I actually grew up wanting to be a cricketer, as most kids my age back then did. Everyone in the childhood fantasized about being a cricketer. I used to think that I was an all-rounder. I used to think I could ball like Javdal Srinath and I could bat like Sachin Tendulkar, but maybe that's not completely true. But I did enjoy the sport a lot. Academics was something that we were always steered towards. So eventually I did go down that path, and cricket was never really something, a dream that I could fulfill. But yes, I still enjoy watching cricket. And IPL, like we mentioned, that's what we're going to talk about. We are not going to call ourselves experts on the subject matter of the IPL. So we have a friend of mine joining in. Suneer Chowdhary is going to be joining us right now. So what I'm going to do is to use my technical abilities that Mark lacks and bring Suneer into this conversation with magic. Suneer, you've been listening to us, obviously. A warm welcome to On the Mark with Arpit. Thank you so much for joining us. You are our first guest on the show, so you're battling frontiers and paving the path for other people to come. Maybe lesser famous people like J.B. Carragher, who Mark Seagraves might get. Go on, Suneer. Tell us a little about yourself. Tell us a little about your interest in cricket and what you've done about it.
Thank you very much, Arpit, for having me on your show. And it's a privilege, actually, and I'm not saying it for the sake of saying it, given that I'm the first guest. My cricket journey has been just like yours. I was listening to you. Unlike Mark's, I was not very good at it. I used to think that I'm good at being a keeper batsman. Was a good keeper, an okay batsman. And then studies took over. A very strict mum was a principal of high school, junior college. Cricket is a hobby, and you restrict it to it being a hobby, and you start preparing for engineering, and you start preparing for software, and you start preparing for the rest of your life. And that's where cricket took a back seat. But I always wanted to get into cricket. So once I had the chance, and IPL actually has played a huge part in that journey, because when IPL started in 2008, I was still about 3 months away from joining my first job after my post-graduation. And at that stage, I had a lot of opportunities to write on cricket, and that's where it took off. And then I said, okay, probably I can do this as a full-time vocation, and bid adieu to my software journey. And there is where cricket journalism began for me, 2008, 2009. So yeah, IPL and me have a connection there.
Yeah. So you've been obviously part of covering cricket for such a long time. We've just been part of watching it. Now we're talking about it a little bit. Interesting. You mentioned 2008. You mentioned 2008, and I was just thinking, wow, it's been 16 years. The IPL is going on. It's also 16 years since you and I, around about the same time, both quit our software jobs and got into this. So, all right, we've had the Yeah, we've had the introductions here. Who wants to start things off? Okay, I'll just ask a very generic question about it, and then we can delve into a few specifics. How has I know it's just been a couple of matches so far for each team, Sunil. So how has the IPL been so far for you?
In a lot of ways, it's been on expected lines. You expect Chennai to do well, and they do well. You expect Mumbai to start off slowly, they start off slowly. So in a lot of ways, it's been on expected lines. But what's been exciting is there's a couple of things actually. One is the rule that they have brought about where they allow bowlers to bowl two bouncers, and you being a bowler, a former bowler, would love that as well. The other thing has been the fact that leading into the IPL, there were a lot of captaincy changes. So you have the next gen taking over captaincies. MSD is no longer the captain at Chennai. Rohit Sharma is no longer the captain at Mumbai. And there are three other young captains. So you have about 5 captains in the making who could take that step up and become India captains in the future. So you're looking at it from that perspective as well. How do they go about it? You have the likes of Rahul Dravid, VVS Lakshman, and those big names who are looking at these guys very closely. And you want to know what they do as captains, not just as batsmen or bowlers.
Can I just come in on this? I just want to ask Suneer a question, if I can. When you said they'd make the step up from captain of the IPL team to the test team, if you like, how much of a step is that? Because in football, there's also steps, but from what you're saying, is it a huge step? Because I see these guys and I think they're well equipped to be able to go and play test cricket, but you saying that they need the step up to that. How big is that gap?
So there are two things here: the step up to play Test cricket, and then you're talking about step up to captain a Test team. I think the step up to captain a Test team is huge. If you look at all the India captains so far in the recent past, they have not directly been appointed Test match cricket captains. They have had a huge amount of experience either playing Test cricket or having captained in the shorter format. So I think ideally what would happen here is that once the Rohit Sharmas, the Virat Kohlis of the world have had their career in the next 2, 3, 4 years done, you would have, in fact, even now, there is a question mark whether Rohit Sharma would be leading the Indian T20 World Cup team, or even if he does, who will be the next captain? And I think, Arpit, you're smiling because of what has happened in the Mumbai Indians camp more recently with respect to the captaincy issue. Yeah. But from a perspective of Test match captain, I think that's a huge step up. It's almost, if I could give an analogy, if I were to be good enough to give that analogy, you're coaching a tier 3 side in the English Football League, and suddenly you're expected to coach a top 10 team in the Premier League. It's that kind of a step up, I would say, as a captain. Even as a test match player, it's a big enough step up. But we have seen in the series between India and England recently that there are a lot of players like the Virat Kohlis of the world who were absent from the team. Virat Kohli was not there. There was Jadeja who was missing in one of the games. There was KL Rahul who was missing. Pujara had been dropped. Rahane had been dropped. A lot of youngsters were picked up and they did well. At least in the home series, they did well. So not so much of an issue when it comes to, although it's difficult, when it comes to playing Test cricket, but when it comes to captaincy, it's a very different ball game. If I could add here is how the BCCI, the Indian Cricket Board, usually goes about this is that they would pick up 1 or 2 of these youngsters to captain India in the shorter format, like the T20s, T20s against a lower ranked team like an Afghanistan or an Ireland or any of these teams where we send in second teams or the third teams, and then based on that they would probably take them forward and let them captain the ODI team, and then you get to the Test match level of captaincy.
So 2 reasons I was smiling before Mark says anything. Obviously, that whole brouhaha around Mumbai Indians and the captain and all the memes have already started, right? Like, oh, kya kar diya, ye kar diya, whatever. And the second reason I was smiling was, so most cricket lovers, I mean, there's no authority behind this statement, but I would like to believe are crazy about the IPL more than they are crazy about Test cricket. I know Suneer, for one, is the reverse of that. So the minute you mention Test cricket, there's like waves of euphoria that go on in his brain, and then he starts talking about Test cricket with that fondness. That is the second reason I was smiling. Okay, so you said Chennai starts off well, starts off slow. this is going to be a very brief show. So obviously, I'm going to fire in my questions as soon as I can. Out of the teams, the 10 teams, Suneer, name 3 teams based on what you have seen and the preparation for the IPL that you think are top contenders.
Oh, well, the short answer is Chennai, Rajasthan, and if I could pick a dark horse here, Lucknow Super Giants.
RCB. No. Okay. Obviously, very heartbroken fans, RCB fans. They've since day one of the IPL 2008, they've been thinking. Yeah. So okay. So we'll say that again. Sorry, Chennai. You said
Chennai, Rajasthan, and LSG, Lucknow Super Giants. But on a serious note about RCB, I wish they do well. I wish they make it to the playoffs because the kind of fan following that they have, and the fact that the Women's Premier League team has won the WPL recently, it gives them that motivation that after having played for 15, 16 seasons, they haven't won. And there is this team which has won after playing for 2 seasons. So that's a motivation enough that they need to start, if not winning, at least getting to the playoffs regularly, not just this season, but say getting into the playoffs 3 or 4 times in the next 5 years and getting to the final. But I have a feeling that they need to focus a lot more on their bowling rather than stack up their squad with a lot of good batsmen, high quality batsmen. I think they need to start focusing on their bowling as well. And that's something that is known. It's just that at times you don't understand what's the thinking behind not having the kind of bowling that you need for that kind of a surface at home for them.
Okay, interesting. Mark, your turn.
No, I watched the game the other night. It's the Sunrisers of Hyderabad. They broke the record. I think they got 275, did they? And Mumbai Indians nearly matched it. Nearly got there. But are these teams? What is it? Is it about the bowlers that will win you the IPL, or is it about the batsmen, or is it equal?
I think cricket matches, whatever you do, you can get the best batsman, but you've got to have good bowlers to win it. It may be the flattest surface, which was the case in that match between Hyderabad and Mumbai. It was a very flat surface. And Mumbai, as you rightly pointed out, were on track to winning it. But it was the bowling that pulled it back in those last 4 or 5 overs. I think it was Ian Bishop on commentary who was asked this question. What can bowlers do in such conditions where it is so helpful for the batsman? And he made a very fair point, which is something that happened later on when Hyderabad was bowling, that they need to start mixing it up by bowling a little slowly, bowling wide yorkers, bowling wide slower balls, and even a difference of, say, if a bowler gets hit for 2 sixes, but the third ball not going for a 6, when the asking rate is 14, 15, 16 and over, makes that difference. So a smarter bowler will think about it from a ball-to-ball perspective rather than thinking about it that I have to bowl 6 balls, all of them in the Yorker area, or say the new rule, as I said, bounces have come in. So try and mix and match. And that is where matches, I think, are won. Obviously, in a game like a 277 plays a 250, batsmen would come on top. But more often than not, I think it would be the bowlers who would win your matches.
And I just want to ask one more question to you about that. You mentioned about the pitch being flat. How important is A, the pitch, and B, winning the toss? Are they vital, or especially in the IPL, is it an advantage, or does it not matter at all?
I think I'll go with the second question first about winning the toss. A lot of it depends on the dew in the outfield, whether it's IPL or it's any kind of white ball cricket played in a country like India or in anywhere in the subcontinent, where in the second half it becomes so much easier for the batsman to play, or for the bowlers so much more difficult for the bowlers to bowl, because every time the ball goes onto the outfield, the dew kind of settles on the seam, and then spinners are not able to get the grip right. The fast bowlers see the ball slipping. Technology has advanced a little more these days. The dew is kind of brushed aside in the second half. So far in this season, we haven't seen the dew play a huge part. But as we go into the summer months, it's already summer actually, but as we go into the harsher summer months of April and May, we would probably get that dew in as well. Also, what would happen coming to the pitch is that it's still early in the tournament, so the pitches are a little fresher. Batting is a little easier, But as we go into that second half of the season, of the IPL season, we'll see that these same pitches get used over and over again. It's difficult for the groundsmen to get them back into that same condition, and then it might just become a little more difficult to bat on it. So a score of 200 might go down to 180, might go down to 160. But we're talking about averages. On a given day, a fresh pitch gets doled out to the teams. Like what happened in the last year's IPL final, Gujarat Titans scored 200 batting first, and Chennai chased it down. It was a 15 over chase for them because of rains, and they chased it down and won it on Duckworth Lewis system. So the pitch was a very batting friendly one. But overall, you will see that there's a change in that kind of. The run scoring would reduce drastically, I would say. We keep a lookout for the dew as well.
Okay. Yeah, Suneer, I'm going to come in and ask you about, and you can answer this in like multiple prongs, players to watch out for, have the orange cap this time, who could be the player of the series. It's up to you whether you want to, because I was looking at this list, I've got it open on my phone here, and player of the series, it's literally been different names almost every season. Only a couple of guys have repeated over it, so you can point out on that. But the lead into my question is going to be, which I just read like a couple of days ago, about this young pace bowler for India who's bowling at like non-stop close to 150. So just tell us about that, what you expect, and how come suddenly, because I knew one of the problems India had for the longest time, say the love of Srinath, and I know we had Nehra and all also come in between, but again, he was like a mainstay for a very long time. Ishant Sharma for a very long time. It was hard to get new bowlers who were bowling consistently like that. How come suddenly India is producing these bowlers who are literally competing to be the fastest and the best in the world?
Well, I can hazard a guess here. I think one big thing that has changed is the kind of pitches that have been dished out at the first class level. Ranji Trophy, and India has been known to be very spin friendly when it comes to conditions, especially in 4-day and 5-day cricket. It has also been known to produce a lot of spinners, and it has been known as a team to play spin very well. There has been a change in that. India no longer, I think, the batsmen no longer play spin as well as the likes of Lakshman, Tendulkar, Dravid, Ganguly. All these guys were great players of spin. I don't think we have that kind of quality playing spinners. That could be down to the kind of pitches at the first class level. And first class cricket, if you see, from north to south, there are a lot of pitches around which are green in nature. They remain green over four days of first class cricket. At times, you would find it difficult to distinguish between the outfield and the surface. They become harder. Spinners have found it difficult to pick up wickets by the backfull. I think you go to a Headingley or you go to some such venues in the UK, you will get such pitches. It's those kind of pitches that you see, especially up north. And I think that over a period of time has brought in a lot of fast bowlers. Also, I think IPL has a lot of. You can credit IPL to this, because IPL needs fast bowlers. We have had overseas fast bowlers coming in, but now there is a chance for a lot of these guys to play in the IPL, so they are picking up even fast bowling as one of the things. Also, like how did Bumrah become such a big name? Is John Wright was one of the Mumbai Indians scouts who saw him bowling at a random game somewhere in Baroda. He was picked, I think it was Gujarat, I'm not sure whether it was Baroda, but he was picked and he was brought in and he was built into something as big as he is. More and more scouts from the IPL are traveling around the country. Scouting is no longer about just looking at Cricinfo, looking at the top wicket takers in the first class cricket, looking at the top run getters at first class cricket. It's become a full-time job, a full-time occupation, something that you would have probably had in football as well. In Premier League, scouts play a huge part. Something that has happened in IPL in the recent times, in the last 7, 8, 9 seasons. So a lot of these players, a lot of these bowlers, fast bowlers, are getting noticed, which otherwise may have existed 20 years, 25 years, 30 years ago, but nobody was noticing them. So a lot of players are getting noticed. So even someone like a Mayank Yadav, who bowled at 155.8. There's Umran Malik, who's bowled very quickly, regularly touching 150. So when you go in with those kind of basics, you have that kind of raw pace. All you need is to work on your direction, your lines, your lengths, and that happens with time. Your temperament, that happens with time. match awareness, match situation. All these factors can then be built in. It's that extra pace that, and you saw it yesterday in that debut that Mayank Yadav made, the guy that you were talking about, bowled at 155.8. It was not just a speed. He was making the batsman hurry. A guy like Johnny Bairstow who's played international cricket, he was finding it difficult to play that pace. So, yeah, it's something that's a big tick for the IPL, and you can credit the IPL for that. So, a couple of reasons it's IPL.
It's very interesting. It's very interesting you brought that whole scenario because, Mark, we found at least one topic to talk about on our podcast. Mark is very passionate about Indian football, very, very passionate, more so than a lot of Indian football fans I know. And what you just mentioned in terms of, grassroots levels, first class, scouts, all that information, how it impacts cricket, how it could impact football if done right. And we'll probably do that on another day. Mark, I'll just give questioning duties to you if you have something to ask.
No, it's just a random one, really. I mean, how much of an impact has foreigners been in the IPL to these youngsters coming through? So you've had big bowlers, even Pat Cummins is still here now. How much of an impact is that for these young Indian bowlers, batsmen, fielders, and whatever? Have they made a bigger impact than you would have thought? Or have they just brought them in for the name only to make the IPL become what it is right now?
Oh, I think it's IPL. When it started in 2008, I think it was an unknown quantity. But what we have right now is a tournament where you will be found out if you're just there for the name. If you're not good, you're not good. Mitchell Starc was the second highest paid IPL cricketer this season, and I think overall behind Pat Cummins, I think it was a 20 crore INR package. And he has had 2 bad matches, and there are fans who are lambasting him, probably some of them unfairly at that. But you got to deliver. So I don't think it's just about the name, but you hit the nail on the head. When there are these cricketers who've been brought in, a lot of them are not just there to bowl or to bat. They're also there to help these youngsters, the Indian youngsters, grow. And not just players, you have coaches coming in from outside as well. Almost every team has a huge coaching staff, and a lot of them are from overseas. You have Stephen Fleming, who's been there with the Chennai Super Kings since probably the second season. And a lot of these successful teams, they have coaches who've been there for a long time. They have a core of players who have done well over a period of time. So that's where these foreign players, foreign coaches play a huge part. If you look at Mumbai Indians, I mean, they've not had a great start to the season, but even Mumbai Indians have had players like, or have had coaches like a Mahela Jayawardena, have had a guy like Lasith Malinga, who after having played for them became their bowling coach. Kieron Pollard, again, a foreigner who's become the batting coach now. In fact, Rajasthan Royals, one of the teams that I said could do well this season. One of the reasons why I think they would do well is they have a good core of youngsters and experienced players, but they also have Kumar Sangakkara, who's the director of cricket for them. And I think he joined last season, but now we're looking at him having settled down in the role as well. So I expect good things from him. He's one guy who wasn't just a great batsman, but his cricketing brain is something that they can really look into. So foreigners do bring a lot to the sport, to the game, to the tournament, not just as players, but also as you're looking at the backroom staff, the coaches, the directors of cricket, and so on.
Suneer, you obviously told me before we started this, you've not been doing a lot of these audio-visual discussions, broadcasts and all, but seriously doing a lot more, man. It's really fun to listen to you talk about cricket. I obviously have the pleasure because I'm your friend, so I listen to it in person. But I'm pretty sure there's
we have a football group. We have a football group in which I kind of sneak in with a couple of cricketing things, and I get shooed by the football fans. But sometimes.
But I'm going to get from
the
this.
cricket fans are in there too.
But what I want to get from this is when you were talking about grassroots, and Arpit mentioned I'm very passionate about Indian football. I'm passionate about grassroots Indian football, not necessarily the ISL, but
Correct.
I think what's happened in cricket is that because of the love of cricket since India won the World Cup, it's completely boomed, hasn't it? To where it is now, and obviously you've got top class batsmen, top class bowlers, all the rest of it. Is that because of the grassroots program, or is it still seen as a bit of an elitist game where maybe, what I'm trying to get at is with the grassroots program, there's so many people, kids in the rural areas in and around that never see the light of day of even getting a cricket coach or very much more so than a football coach. How can we maybe change the dynamic of this? What would you say to me to try and implement in terms of, do we go to the AIFF or do we? Sorry, go on, Arpit. Can it be the same? Can it be the same structure?
You just want, yeah.
Yeah, I want to know what would be the way forward, because it's working for the cricket. Obviously, is working. Is it because of the money that's invested into cricket, or is it because the coaching's better, or is it because India are better at cricket than they are at football, so they'll put more money into that way? I want to know, because the way the football is at the moment, it needs a huge change, and it only could change through the grassroots. I just wanted to understand from your point of view, could it translate from the cricket to the football?
You're saying something, Arpit?
Yeah, I was going to say that one, we're throwing him into the deep end a little bit because he came here to talk about cricket, and now we're going to ask him how we can implement grassroots and make it better for football.
I was saying,
fine.
Yeah, how you can do it. I mean, it's quite.
So if you could point to a couple of reasons, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I would say,
if you could point to a couple of reasons, yeah.
Look, in a lot of ways, IPL has been a culmination of a perfect storm waiting to happen. It started with the ICL, the Indian Cricket League, where it was a parallel body that started, and it led the BCCI into thinking about a T20 tournament like this. India won the T20 World Cup in 2007. So the push came from India having done well at the international level, where a lot more people then started following the format. Before India won the T20 World Cup in 2007, India had just lost the 50-over World Cup in the West Indies that very year. And there was that phase where Greg Chappell had been driven out and things were not going very well for cricket. Now, I'll just go back a couple of decades, 4 decades, where India won the 83 World Cup, the 1983 World Cup. And that led to a lot more interest coming into cricket, which was always there. But India was a two-sport nation, cricket and hockey. Suddenly, cricket took off, and hockey is where we are at right now. And it was to do with how India did at that World Cup in the 83 World Cup. Similarly, what India did in the 2007 World Cup, that triggered something like an ICL, and that triggered something like an IPL. So as Arpit rightly said, football is probably not my forte, but at some level it has to come from the Indian national team doing well, or in this case, ISL becoming that big that it leads to a lot of people at the ground level, a lot of people at the grassroots level wanting to or aspiring to play in the ISL or for the Indian national team, and making this a full-time occupation at that as well. I mean, given the kind of salaries that IPL pays, and given the kind of salaries that are at their disposal for any other sport in the country, probably kabaddi aside, why would a youngster want to be associated with any other sport unless he's really good at that sport? And then if he's that good at that sport, then you need to have that someone recognizing that, picking that person up, and probably not just playing in the ISL or in the Indian national team, having him go for those tryouts and all overseas. I think India have had a couple of players who have done that as well. There was a goalkeeper who kind of played
in. Yeah.
Yes. So if such stories come out a lot more, and this is a day and age where social media really hypes up everything, even in cricket. So if you have something like that happen in Indian football at whatever level, I'm sure it will get hyped up, and which is good for the sport as well in a lot of ways.
Interesting. Like I said, that could be a complete discussion about how to head and what to do about that. But for now, we'll keep it very specifically IPL. I've got my predictions and what I wanted to ask. Mark, any final questions from you?
What are your predictions, Arpit? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What are your
Let's
predictions? What are your
Oh,
predictions?
you're asking me my prediction. So I'm going to go. He has asked me this question in a while. I'm a massive MS Dhoni fan. So I'm with Chennai. I want Chennai to win it.
But that's not a prediction. That's a wish.
No, I'm predicting they're going to go. I mean, they did it last year, so I think they're going to do it again. They're going to defend the title. I'm going to go. And the way they've started, for sure, I'm going to go with Chennai. It's a prediction and a dream.
Quite liking the look of the Chennai team, actually. They have been called the granddaddy team in the past. They've had a lot of older players, and they have slowly and steadily changed that around. Rachin Ravindra has started off very well. He had a great World Cup last year in India, and he's carried on from there. Shivam Dubey is doing very well in that sense. I think Shivam Dubey could be one of the players to watch out when it comes to even the Indian team. And for me, looking at IPL teams, my mind always works in a way that, okay, what can he do and can he make it to the Indian team? And I think Shivam Dubey could be one of those players who might even make the T20 World Cup, which comes in later. But yeah, I like the look of the Chennai team as well. So I don't know about wishes. I don't think I'll wish for Chennai to win. I would want a new team to take on the IPL this time, including RCB. But I have a feeling that Chennai might be
I think
in the running.
Okay. Mark?
Right. Having watched that game the other day, I was so excited. The Sunrisers Hyderabad. So I'm going to go for an outsider. They've won it once before, I gather. So this would be the second time they'd win it. And I think if you can score that many runs, it's like scoring goals in football. If you're going to give yourself a chance. And I know it was a one-off, but that's my logic behind it. So yeah, I'm going to go for the Sunrisers Hyderabad.
In fact, Sunrisers Hyderabad had beaten RCB in the final to win that maiden title. So
2016.
RCB fans again may not like it exactly. 2016 might not like what you just said.
Anyway, fun discussion, guys. Of course, this was planned just on a whim to talk about the IPL, what to expect from it. I've had fun talking about cricket, Mark. We've often spoken about football so much. We might need to make this a regular feature sometime on the Mark with Arpit. But thank you to everyone who's watched